Pipe Screams. Written and narrated by L. W. Sutton, also known as CleavingThought FromBone.
There's something wrong with my apartment. It didn't always used to be this way, but now I'm left with only more questions and no real answers. But the implications are what frighten me the most. But maybe I should start at the beginning, just so you understand. My apartment is small, has only one bedroom, and the kitchen is barely wide enough to contain a fridge. But the rent is cheap, and the neighbors keep to themselves. I've only been here for a few months, and everything seemed just fine at first. I didn't mind the small inconveniences, such as the cramped living space. But a few nights ago, I awoke to a strange noise muffled by a wall or a door, but was unsure of the details at first. Only that I heard what sounded like a faint scream from somewhere in the dark of my apartment. I listened in silence, ears pricked, when I heard it again. At first I thought it sounded like a cat. I don't own a cat. So curious, I turned on all the lights and inspected my apartment. Nothing, except that screaming noise coming from inside one of my small bathroom's walls. I banged on the wall, hoping the creature would stop, thinking it was in another apartment. But it didn't. The sound was woeful and persistent. But what could I do? I crawled into bed, muffled my ears with my pillows, and went back to sleep. The next morning I called the landlord to complain. There weren't supposed to be any pets in the complex, and whoever this owner was either abusing their pets or being just plain neglectful. The landlord reminded me that there weren't supposed to be any pets in the building and assured me that everyone was compliant. I know what I heard, but it was like he was just dismissing what I had to say, uncaringly. Typical, I thought, hanging up my phone. With not much else to be done, I went about my day. However, the noise persisted every night, and it was starting to affect my sleep schedule. After 3 nights of this, I thought that maybe some animal had gotten trapped inside the wall somehow. I asked the neighbor next door the previous day, and although they said that they had heard the noise too, they did not own any pets. I grabbed a small claw hammer and began tearing bits of sheetrock off to access the innards of the wall beneath. There was no cat inside, no trace of any animals for that matter. But I still heard the noise, still muffled. At first I thought maybe the neighbor had lied and went to press my ear against the panel beyond the studs to listen. But that's when I noticed it. The screaming. It wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from one of the plumbing pipes once concealed by the wall itself. Not only was this impossible, so too was what I thought I heard when I leaned in close for a listen. Some of the barrier now removed to allow further audible details. There was a cadence. It sounded like someone or something screaming for help. But that was impossible. I didn't bother calling the landlord. I spent the next hour scouring the basement of our building, trying to find the source of the screams for help, thinking that a person must be trapped somewhere down there. But I found nothing, and for the rest of the night, I heard no more screams. I would call the landlord once again in the morning. Morning came, and before I did a thing, I performed my morning ritual of getting ready for the day. However, while I was in the shower, I noticed water pooling at my feet, and what's more, a grayish, milky substance was clouding the pool as well. Something was clogging the drain. I had had enough. I jumped out of the shower, dried myself off of what I found to be foul-smelling water, and dressed in clothes that I had picked out. But when I walked out my front door, I was met with a sight that I did not expect to see. It was like an episode of Cops outside in the parking lot, and one of the neighbors who lives upstairs was being led away into a police car, wrists cuffed behind his back. I asked around. So did my neighbors, but the cops weren't talking, saying it was an open investigation and no one knew anything. For some reason, the water to our building was shut off at that point for nearly the whole day, and was back on the following morning. I called the landlord the day everything happened, but he could offer me no explanation either. It was that night on the news that I finally learned what happened. My upstairs neighbor was always really quiet. Apparently, he kept to himself by design, because he didn't want anyone to know that he was in fact a serial killer, a child murderer to be precise. Police were tipped off when a plumber had found an unexplainable, meaty substance clogging some of the drains, leading back to this man's apartment. Apparently, this wasn't the first time, and for some reason or another, they contacted the authorities. The substance was sent out, and results came back that it was human remains. Warrant in hand, the police broke down his door, and what they discovered horrifies me to this day. He had over 4 child's bodies stuffed into the walls and under his floor, right above my head. Apparently, he had decided that he needed to start disposing of this accumulation, and was disposing of them by cutting them into the smallest pieces that he could and flushing them down his drains. This is what clogged the pipes that morning. But what really disturbs me is after they pulled the remains of that little girl from the pipes, I haven't heard the screaming since.
Sweet Peas. Written by SonicFoxPrower. Narrated by Dodgedis82. Upon a hilltop stands a small tree where the wind is free. Rabbits, foxes, and other small creatures scurry about, branches taking hold. The leaves dance in the wind, dancing to the sounds of the wondrous bird songs, bringing life to all it finds. The branches protect all, taking the beating of the rain. Those protected continue their lives, complaining for each drop that breaches the shield. The small tree stands upon the hill, taking their tolls. My sweet peace begins to falter, still the guardian of the hill. Yet, with small cracks and clicks, their true soul is revealed. The roots dying, the leaves soar into peaceful desolation. The branches slowly bending to fate's whim, having hidden its ugly truths behind the sweetest of lies. I shall walk away, knowing the time has come.